The European Union has responded to Donald Trump's newest threats on trade. EU Trade Commissioner Maroš Šefčovič said mutual respect is needed and not tariffs. This after the U.S. president reignited global tensions by threatening to impose a 50% tariff on imports from the European Union. Trump accuses EU member states of using unfair trade practices. In his view, they even include value-added tax and unjustified lawsuits against American companies. Trump said the EU is running a huge goods trade surplus with America and that negotiations to reduce this are going nowhere. U.S. and European stocks tumbled in response to his remarks. In a statement from the Oval Office, Trump renewed his pressure on European companies to move production to the U.S.
I'm not looking for a deal. I mean, we've set the deal. It's at 50%. But again, there is no tariff if they build their plant here. Now, if somebody comes in and wants to build a plant here, I can talk to them about a little bit of a delay.
We're joined now by George Magnus, an independent economist and commentator, and an associate at the China Center at Oxford University. George, how seriously should we take Trump's threats to impose 50% import tariffs on goods from the EU starting on June 1st?
Well, good morning. I think excuse me, like many things, I think it's important, to take Donald Trump seriously, but not necessarily literally.
Well, thank you very much.
We've seen, obviously, during the course of this year, extraordinary volatility, announcements of big tariff increases, delays, deals, negotiations, and so on. So he says that he's not after a deal, or the 50% is the deal, but his Treasury Secretary, also said, or gave certainly the impression that this is designed to influence the pace of negotiations, which Trump is obviously quite dissatisfied with. He wants faster action. He doesn't really understand, perhaps very well, the way in which the European Union goes about its business. It's got 27 members. Things have to be done by consensus and so on and so forth. Obviously I could look like a complete fool in a week's time, but I do think this is part of the sort of negotiation tactics rather than, an announcement on his Truth social media isn't really a sort of policy making as such.
Trump keeps saying that the EU was only founded to harm America. Brussels and the EU states, he says, have used trade barriers to create a large export surplus with the U.S. Is Trump right?
No, not almost on everything, actually. Of course, the Europeans run a big trade surplus with the United States, but the services trade is a deficit. So the Americans have a surplus in selling services. So if you talk about the whole of the commercial arrangement, which is goods and services, the deficit is probably about a half as big as it would have been on goods only. So that's the first point. The second point is that, yes, there are differences in terms of the way in which the EU and the United States tariff one another's products, and non-tariff barriers, which the Americans do want to talk about, is a kind of a bone of contention which needs to be addressed. But it's not true, of course, that that tariffs, will in any way, shape or form influence America's overall trade deficit. That's determined much more by the kinds of policies which the American administrations, this one and previous ones and future ones, actually implement at home. And it's about, how the economy domestically, in terms of the balances between consumption and investment and so on and savings, all kind of work out. So I think from the very beginning, Trump's pursuit of tariffs in this regard is misguided. And, it's not without foundation in some respects, because obviously supply chain geography needs to be looked at. And, certainly the issues with China are very big. And that's also a big sticking point between the US and the EU right now.
We should mention the U.S. president is also threatening Apple with punitive tariffs if the tech company doesn't relocate its production to the U.S. Is Trump effectively shooting himself in the foot?
Oh, certainly. I mean, I think it's a fantasy to think that Apple is going to basically relocate the manufacture and assembly of iPhones to the United States. I mean, Trump should be happy or satisfied, I should say, if the production and assembly of iPhones and other products is being kind of reoriented towards friendly countries, including India, for example, which is where Apple have said that they're going to manufacture more and more of their iPhones. But the wage costs and pension costs and social security and other costs and tariffs on imported components, if Apple were to do this, would swamp any tariffs they might have to pay. So I think that's just not going to happen. And it is basically putting pressure on Tim Cook and Apple to do something which is not in the company's interests or indeed America's interests.
Got it. That's economist George Magnus. As always, many thanks, George.
Thank you.